Hello and welcome to the Writing from the Womb podcast. We have Abigail here with us today. Thank you so much, Abigail, for being with us. And we also have Abigail's son. Tell us his name again.
Xavier.
Xavier, who is being mothered into a nap right here on the podcast with us. So hopefully that energy will all help us to be soothed into rest and renewal and nourishment. So thank you for sharing that with us today, Abigail.
Thank you for having me.
I think I might just lie down and have a nap myself.
I know, right?
I know, right? So may we all receive nourishment and rest by listening to this podcast. Anyone who listens or watches the video, may you receive that divine mother nourishment and rest that Xavier is experiencing right now as well. So thank you. Today, I'm going to start out with a poem that's the first part in a two-part series. And I'm not going to read the second part until the next podcast, but I think some of the work that Abigail is going to share with us will take us to where that second part is going to go. So I won't feel too incomplete. But if you do want to hear the second part of this poem, then stay tuned for the next podcast. So this one is called Goddess Love, Part 1. I don't dare breathe in your love as deep as it can go. You are the air that exposes all hidden fear, beckoning that forward is the only way back to amniotic comfort. I haul out heavy excuses, tying them carefully to the tips of my wing feathers, then cry out in rage that your wind isn't strong enough to lift me. I build stone wind breaks around your power, which whistle only tiny hints of your song through the cracks. I sing my longing to the stones, softly, not to crumble them with sound. So that's the first part. And I just feel that I wrote this poem at a time when I felt my own limitations holding me back from connecting with my divine self and with the goddess. And I just felt I was putting words to that feeling and noticing the choices I was making in my life and the difficulties I was having connecting with that energy. And I just was like calling myself out. Here I am tying these stones to my own wing feathers, right? And holding myself back. And so it seems this might be a common experience. And so I'm curious to hear what you have to share about that experience, Abigail, and where it goes from there. I know my second part poem, I'll share where it went for me from there in the next podcast episode, but I'm curious to hear where it goes from there from your perspective.
Yeah, so I'm not sure if you want me to share. So in my book, well, co-authored book, I should say, Voices of the Avalonian Priestesses, it was part of our initiation in almost like graduation from the Priestess Presence Mystery School. And we had to write like an empowered words kind of thing. And all of those words got published in the book. Mm. And so mine is about the embodiment of the divine feminine, embodiment of the power that is within me and embracing that. And so mine is called I Am Goddess. Mm-hmm. And so I can share that now, or we can do that later and just kind of talk about the process right now, whichever way you want to go.
Well, let's talk about the process of getting there, because it sounds to me like you had that experience and you were able to write about the experience of fully embodying that power after going through a series of initiations. And for me, I didn't have an initiatory group. I was having to initiate myself by turning over rocks and looking behind trees and going down into caves by myself to reclaim these traditions. And so there are many solitary practitioners that may have that kind of experience as well, especially in this day and age where there's not necessarily a mystery school, or there wasn't when I was going through this process. There weren't readily available mystery schools, or I didn't have access to them. But it sounds like you did go through an initiation process through a mystery school, maybe some of your own personal initiations as well. And I'd love to hear about that, because for people who are listening who are in the process of like, wow, I don't know if I can do this, or in the process of being initiated, they're not quite there yet. Let's walk through the journey a little bit together.
Well, let's talk about initiations. You know, you don't need a mystery school to receive initiations. I think life in general is the biggest initiation, right? So we all start our journey going through different milestones, developmental, stages, spiritual stages. You know, we evolve from one aspect of ourselves to the other. That's all initiations. So we begin by going through our own initiations, and then through your own initiations, you can call in specific areas, or that's the best way to say it. You can call in the specific areas that you want to get advanced in. And that's how, you know, perhaps a book will show up for you where you read it and you get initiated in it, or, you know, you might stumble upon a mystery school that you can go deeper in. And so for me at the beginning, it's the same thing. You know, I had to go through my own journey, and I didn't have, you know, anyone around me who talked about goddesses or divine feminine. You know, I grew up in a very, Christian, you know, group. So I was surrounded by that. And that's how I learned to connect even deeply with the divine, in a way that I rebelled against religious stuff, because I could see that there was a deeper truth. Right. And I wanted to go deeper. And so that was kind of like my background. So really diving into my own power, my own divine feminine power, and then diving into goddess work, that was all later that everything came together. But my initiation started from a very young age through what I went through the experiences that I had, you know. Yeah.
And did you ever have, like, I had the experience of a book jumping off the bookshelf at a bookstore, and it wouldn't go back on the shelf. And it was actually a journal, a goddess journal. And many of the poems in this book I wrote initially in that goddess journal. It had beautiful paintings of different goddesses from traditions from around the world, with like archaeologically accurate jewelry and clothing, and, you know, other objects or animals in the painting with them, beautiful painting, and then a short description of that goddess and those traditions, and maybe a little bit of their mythology, and then pages and pages of empty pages for journaling in. It was this like gift. It just like jumped off the bookstore shelf. And so I started, you know, looking at these paintings and reading the names of these goddesses and writing prayers and poems about whatever, you know, was being evoked in me. And so it was it was a solitary process, but it was just this inner awakening to the presence of the goddess in my life. And I have a similar Christian background as you. And so, I had some exposure to different religions in college, because I studied religious studies and even had and women's studies. So I had some courses about women and religion and different traditions and like that. So I was already inquiring, and I'd had some exposure to Wiccan traditions, so European-based traditions, goddess worshiping traditions, and it had gone to, you know, participated in various groups like that. So I had some exposure. But then this book really started to initiate me, and this writing process of finding my own voice, my own connection, finding my own communication and communion with the divine feminine through writing. It was very powerful initiation for me. And
Yeah.
and so I'm curious what some of your first initiations into connecting with the divine feminine looked like. Did you have a book jump off the shelf, or or what?
So actually real quick, can we pause it? He just slept so I can put him down. And
Great. So you were going to say?
yeah, you were asking me how it began with my initiations, like when I was younger, or if a book like fell off for me. In my culture, so originally I'm from Ghana. In the African culture in general, you hear a lot of goddesses. And I actually grew up learning about like the river goddess and, the sea goddess, but they weren't not in a good way, like especially coming from a Christian background, they were known as evil. Like you could not connect with them, and there was a fear around connecting with these, I'm going to say deities, right? Because they were all energies that were very much connected to the earth. They were very earth energy, and they were more intense. And, I want to say like alive, you could really experience them when you go to the river, you could actually experience the energy of the river. Like it just, that's, the African energy, the energy of the continent is very potent. So I grew up learning about these goddesses and deities, but not in a good way, just quite opposite of that. So when I came to the US and I started hearing, about the different, Odin and, like all the gods and goddesses. And I was like, this is interesting, right? But there is one goddess that always stood out to me. And actually just the Egyptian culture in general, in terms of the gods and goddesses and high priestess and high priest, I always was drawn to them. So I would see paintings, paintings of Isis and Isis and Osiris, those two, they always, like I would have journals with them on there. Like I was so drawn to them before I even knew who they were. I just knew that they were connected to Egypt. At some point they ruled, but I didn't really understand. I didn't know that Isis was a goddess who, did this and did that, everything that she did, and that didn't come to like way later. So at the beginning, I was more drawn to like the art, right? The art of these beautiful beings and like some of the posts that people will post online about certain goddess and how to work with them, that piqued my interest. So at the beginning, it was more about which goddess was pulling me in. For me, it was, oh, okay. So the other one was Mother Mary too. So we have Isis and then Mother Mary, and Mary Magdalene was always in there. But again, I just saw her as just someone who was connected to Jesus. It wasn't a deep thing. It was like, oh, she was one of the women that followed Jesus around because that's what we were taught, so just the deepening of the connection with all these goddesses didn't happen to way later, but at the beginning they showed up in my life in such a simple way, whether through art or through, spoken words or, through music, that's how they showed up for me. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. And then, how did it start that you began to deepen your relationship with the divine feminine? What sparked that? Like I remember you were saying you had a desire to have a deeper connection with these energies, but I'm curious when that started to take place.
That's very hard to tell because I feel like that desire was always there. But it was a matter of diving into each of their stories and really seeing myself in that story. So, for example, I researched about, Isis and Osiris. What was their story? How did they connect? And that even what prompted me to research them was the whole term twin flames, which I knew I was. And I was trying to figure out what twin flames were. And that was one of the main stories that popped up for me, one of the ancient twin flames, right? Mary Magdalene and Jesus was another twin flame connection right there. So that helped me get in there and get into these specific areas. And then I was able to read about, Goddess Isis' journey and her connection to Osiris and her connection to all of these other goddesses and how, what they're responsible for and how they help us, like that whole thing, right? So it's through storytelling that I was able to dive deep with them, if that makes any sense.
Oh,
The
yeah.
spark, the desire was already, oh my gosh, I can't talk, always there, right? The desire was always there, but it was about, okay, let me dive deeper and see what this story is about. What this goddess, this Egyptian goddess is, I love Egypt. I felt like I've been there before, done it before, lived there before. And so I just wanted to dive in to see what that connection was all about.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So you were reading these stories. Did you engage with them in any way? Did you put the artwork up on your walls? Did you create an
Yes.
altar? Did you do a ceremony? Did you have a conversation?
At the beginning, I didn't even know what an altar was or a ceremony or ritual was. All I knew, like I would, print the pictures of Goddess Isis and Mother Mary, and I'll put in my journal. So my journals will be like pictures, and then I will, put my thoughts next to the picture, or I'll print it out or get a poster and put it on my wall. And that's kind of like how I connected. But like the deepening part wasn't until later, right? When I was actually in, like groups, meditation circles, and surrounded by people who actually got it. When I started going to meetups about spirituality and started diving into all of this stuff. And when I finally got, into the mystery schools, that's when I really went even deeper, right? And so at the beginning, it was just that introduction, like, this is the picture. I'm curious about how you're connected to Egypt, because I really feel like Egypt was my home. And then diving in there, and it's like journaling, and then, dream time, it will come in. And then later it's like, okay, I'm surrounded by these people. They're talking about this goddess. Oh my gosh, this goddess does this and that. Wait, what? No wonder I'm connected to this goddess.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So, and then it went from there.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And so that sounds like a sort of the gradual development of a relationship with these goddesses. Was there ever a moment or a period of time when you noticed that suddenly you felt like these goddesses, perhaps Isis, was no longer, someone out there that you're researching about and trying to get close to, but is actually someone and being involved in your life that
Absolutely.
you're having interactions with, that is influential in your life in some way, that you're having direct experiences with, where your intimacy with this goddess has grown and now you're with Isis or whomever it was. Can you share about that?
So that would, one of the ways, I should say, well, I'm going to start here. It was actually when I started the mystery school, because in the mystery school, you're open to so many journeys and meditations and words that you get to listen to that activates within you, that wisdom within you. So it really pulls the information, or it pulls you from thinking of it as outside of yourself to how do you see that within yourself. I feel like that's when it actually began, because all at the beginning, it was still like, you're a goddess, I'm a human woman, and how can you teach me? How can you help me? And then they went from that to, wait a minute, they're part of me. They were also human too. And they became goddesses by overcoming their challenges and choosing to come and, lead us so that we can also overcome ours. Like that was their choice, right? They were just like me, and I am like them. And so it took like that whole word, even goddess, it took that to a different level where it wasn't on a pedestal anymore. It was right within me. It was right in my heart. It was right within my womb, connecting to that feeling of that. And in the last mystery school I was in, which was specifically about the goddess tradition, we actually, it's called priestess presence, and we walk through the different stages of like the 13 moon mysteries, basically. And each of the moon cycle is connected to a goddess. So we will spend a moon cycle in the energy of one goddess, really exploring that and allowing that goddess to mentor us and teach us. And really contemplating and writing. And that's how like the one that I wrote came through, is through that connection, through that deepening. So it was through that journey that, if you step into a goddess shoes for a lunar cycle, it takes you to a whole different level. You are open to experiencing that part of the goddess that you never thought was even possible for you to experience, especially if you think of the goddesses as something much bigger than you, or far away from you, or you can't really reach them. Then you can't really quite wrap your mind around that. So to step into the energy of the goddess and open up to them mentoring you, and then going through that cycle with them, I mean, it changes you to your core, right? And each time you do that, you activate within yourself the codes of that goddess within yourself, which, that's all part of DNA activation, right? Whatever frequency you step into gets awakened within you. Whatever energy you step into gets awakened within you. And to begin with, you draw those energies, those frequencies to you because you are already in alignment with that. So it just awakens within you what is already within you. Yeah.
And I'm curious, you said that it started out that you would have these goddesses in a journal and then you would write your thoughts. Was journaling and writing a big part of this initiation and this journeying with each goddess for a moon cycle? Was writing part of that?
Well, journaling and writing has always been part of my process. It still is. With my mind, I need to get things out on paper. And the process of writing something down so that it's out of here brings me so much peace. And so it's a non-negotiable for me. I have to write my thoughts on paper. And it's a ritual for me. It's a way for me to connect to not just my thoughts, not just my heart, but it goes beyond that. It connects me to my higher thoughts and my higher feelings, and being able to interpret that right onto paper. So that's always been something that I've done. And then through the initiations with the goddess, it's just something I incorporated into that. Yeah.
And so, this podcast is called Writing from the Womb. And I'm curious what you might have to say about that, because a lot of people, when they hear you say, I'm putting my thoughts on paper, might think that those thoughts were coming from your mind. And a lot of people, when I help people connect with womb listening and listening to the voice of the womb, don't necessarily recognize the connection between the womb and the brain, and that there's a way to connect with the womb and the voice of the womb that might come through like thoughts, or even emotions that then we use our brain can help us to interpret and express verbally.
Exactly.
And so I'm curious what your experience of that connection and recognizing that connection, that, wow, this is guidance coming from this divine connection in my womb, this embodied feminine place of creation. Just what do you have to share about that?
So to begin with, I want to say at the beginning, it might be just your thoughts that you're writing down, and that's totally okay. From your mind, get it out of your mind. There's something about grabbing a piece of pen and touching that paper and transferring what is here through your hands into the pen, into the pen and onto the paper. That whole process is very sacred there. There's a connection that happens. And the more you allow that to happen, at the beginning, it just seems like, okay, I need to get this on paper. I just need to get this out of my mind on paper. But the more you practice that writing, you begin to go deeper than what's just in your mind, right? Because if writing for you is something that calms your mind, the more you write, you're able to calm your mind, which opens up a whole new channel for you to go deeper within yourself. So at the beginning, it's totally okay for it to just be mental stuff. Just get it on paper, but it's your way of starting to open up, right? You get that chaos, the all that stuff out of your mind. And then now you open up more for what is deeper, what is underneath the chaos that was on top. Yeah. So you start with that and you start writing. One of the ways that, for me, when I start writing at the beginning, it might be just mundane stuff, like just get it out on paper. This is what happened today. I'm pissed off about this today. And then all of a sudden I start writing about, but, I forgive this person and, but I had a dream and this is what came through and this is the interpretation. And I start, I just kind of follow through and let it take me deeper and deeper and deeper. So there's a flow to it. And if you allow yourself to just flow through it and not judge yourself through the process, it will take you where you need to go. At the beginning, again, when you start, you can tell the difference if you're in your mind versus if you're connecting from that womb space. And the difference is how deep you're going. Are you just writing about what happened today and what someone told you, which is, again, it's okay. Get it out, right? Get it out on paper. But it might go from, oh, this person told me this and it really pissed me off, to, I wonder why that pissed me off. Like, why did that, I don't even understand why that pissed me off. Oh, wait, when I was little, I remember this person telling me the same thing and it pissed me off. Oh, that's where it came from. So do you see, you start to go in deeper and it's like your mind will help you try to find the answers and will actually in turn take you deeper into that womb space. I think so many times we're so hard on the mind stuff, like, oh, get out of your mind and go into the womb. But for some people, that might be very hard process for them, especially if they have a very strong mercurial mind. That's where they begin. For others, if their voice is already in their womb, it's very easy. They can just go straight there. Right? It just depends on who you are, where your intuition lies, and what work you've been doing, right, to get to where you are. So for some people, it might be very easy. For others, it might not come as easy. So you got to know where you are, what comes easy to you, and then allow that to flow and take you where it needs to go. And it might seem like everything that is coming through is from the mind, but the mind has a higher mind, which is connected to the heart. And so if you allow yourself to go through, eventually you're going to step into the realm of the higher mind, which is connected to the higher heart. And eventually you'll be able to go deeper. Yeah.
Yeah. It's interesting because when you were describing that for some people, it might be easier to access the voice of the womb. It kind of reminded me how I started writing poetry when I was 13 years old, just a few years after I started menstruating. And I recognize now that was very much a voice of my womb and my connection with the divine, which I feel is right there in the womb space. But I'd also had a lot of preparation for that kind of communion in my Christian upbringing. I did a lot of self-guided Bible study where I would read passages of the Bible and then write my reflections from a very connected, prayerful place, in journals and things like that. So that was something that was developed for me, is going to that connection with the divine. And not everyone has had that kind of, and I had that throughout my childhood. Not everyone had that, even if they went to church, there was no encouragement for Bible study of that nature, for writing about your feelings in connection with the divine, or, anything like that. Whereas I did have that. And I also had a lot of body awareness because I was a dancer. And so I was aware of the sensations in my body. I was a very technical dancer. I was a ballerina. And so if someone said, move your right big toe in a certain way, I could move my right big toe in that way, and and any other part of my body I could move and be in connection with and feel as a dancer. That was something that was developed for me. Not everyone has that developed either, you know, and so that combination of somatic sensory body awareness with the ability to commune with the divine through writing and thought and like that, I think made it quite easy for me to connect with that inner voice. And it was also out of need, that I really needed an outlet for my emotions and my true feelings, because it wasn't safe for me to express my emotions and my true feelings in some circumstances in my life. And so I needed that outlet to be able to share that. And because, you know, I was a dancer and all these other things, you know, I really was set up to be able to have an easy connection with that voice, whereas other people might not have had any number of those, or that combination of things. And so as we start to feel the call to explore the voice of the womb and embodiment of the goddess and communion with the goddess in that way, and with the divine, then some of these skills we have to sort of develop from scratch, because we might not have received them growing up. We might not have been trained in them growing up. So yeah, I just like to clarify that, because people can get stopped on their journey by thinking, oh, it's too hard for me, I'm never going to get out of my brain or whatever, you know. It's just brainy stuff. And we're taught in school that the logical thinking brain, and that voice is the only valid voice, right? We really get indoctrinated in that. And that if we have emotions or body sensations, that's not important, that we're not supposed to write about that. That's somehow invalid, and that we're just supposed to be over here with this logical thinking and analytical thinking. And we don't even really get trained very well with that either.
Exactly.
That's a whole other topic. But the truth is, you know, these are all skills that we can develop, and just our education, our background, our experience didn't develop that. And the mind is a wonderful tool if we learn how to discern, you know, and utilize it and feel how it's connected. It's not some, you know, something we have to discard. It's a very powerful tool and I loved how you described it, of, you know, getting it all out there on paper, and then following the inquiry deeper in and seeing what else there is to express. So wonderful.
Exactly.
Yeah. And so did you have something else to say about that?
Yes, I wanted to go into the whole womb, because I wonder if this is what I've experienced with my clients, that what I usually ask them is, where do you feel like your intuitive self is within your body? You know, because the womb voice, you know, we're thinking that it's supposed to be in the physical womb area, right? But what if for someone, they feel it more in their heart? What if for someone it's actually in their third eye, which they see it as like the mind, basically. What if for someone, they might feel it more in the lower back, right? So what I usually do is like, where are you feeling this voice? And then you tell me, and that is your womb space. Right. So it doesn't always fall into that womb area there. You might feel it in a different area, a different part of your body. You know, that's where your body wants to hold that energy, or maybe that's where the energy is most potent. And so it's good to explore that. Where is the womb for you? You know, because again, men don't have physical wombs, but they can write from that space, right? So it's the same concept. See, where is that energy pulling you? Where is that coming from? Is it more from your heart? Are you feeling more in your stomach? Are you feeling actually in the womb space or the sacral area? Is it more from your third eye? Where is this coming from? And then honor that process. Yeah.
You know, it's interesting that you mentioned that. It reminds me of studying in psychology about some of the early theories about women who were suffering from, according to the men, some kind of mental illness, when really
Yep.
their lifestyle was what was causing it, how they were being
Mm-hmm.
treated and all of this. These women were just really upset with their lives. It wasn't working for them, right? And they would try to speak up about it, and they would be labeled as hysterical.
Exactly.
And the diagnostic, the way that it was described, what hysteria was that it was a roaming womb, that their
Yep.
womb was traveling around inside their body. And this was the original, causing all kinds of distress. Well, I mean, there was plenty of reasons why these women were in distress. I mean, their husbands were treating them badly. They had no right to do
Oh.
anything on their own. We could go on and on.
Mm-hmm.
But it was blamed on this roaming womb, that these women were hysterical, and that was often the motivation for performing hysterectomy
Yeah. Oh, man.
and doing all kinds of other horrible treatments. So thank goodness we're liberating ourselves from these ideas. But when you talked about where is the womb for you, it just reminded me of that. And
Totally.
there might be some truth in that the energy of that life generative power of the womb may very well, we can embody that in our whole bodies, not just
Totally.
uterus, right? That although
Yep.
that is the sort of the center, the grounding place,
Yes.
home, we may have it, feel that center anywhere at any time. So thank you.
Exactly.
So I have one other question before I would love to hear you read your goddess embodiment poem, to sort of bring us there. But my question is, first is, did you ever get to connect with these African goddesses that you were raised to think were evil or dangerous? Did you ever reclaim that in your goddess studies?
It's very interesting because they never resonated with me.
Uh-huh.
So even after I was open to the different goddesses, I still explored like what is Yemenia, who is she, and Osha and Oshun basically, and they just never resonated with me. But one thing I realized is that one goddess was interpreted or expressed in different cultures. And so I'm working with Isis here, but in another culture, she might have a different name. In France, that same energy is held in the Black Madonna, right? Mary Magdalene has that same energy. And so I started seeing that. And my connection with a certain goddess tradition, that's what I was pulled into, like the Isis tradition, the Mary Magdalene tradition. That's where my soul came from, and that's where I was pulled into. So yeah, I've had that question before. It's like, well, you have, the African goddess tradition is very powerful. Is that something you connected to? Or I have people who work with the goddesses, and they're like, do you know about them? And what do you feel about them? And I just don't feel connection to them. I feel connection with more of the other expressions. Or sometimes I feel like it's more like I want to say like where the originations of the goddess, if that makes sense, like where it all began, because you can kind of see the expressions of the goddesses, which we get to experience that as women, right? We get to have that energy too. So you can kind of trace it. Okay, this goddess was expressed here and was called this and that, right? And I kind of trace my way all the way back to, but this is the goddess that all that energy came from. Because that's what I was interested in. I want the origin. I want to work with the source. I want to dive in deep there. So when it came to the African goddesses or the deities, I just never resonated with that energy. It's very heavy. It can feel very heavy, and it takes, I believe that people who are called to work with them, they are very connected to the earth energy. They're very connected to or there's a word that came in, like the denseness of this reality, which can be it can pull you into such a dark place if you're not connected to the upper realm as well. It takes a very beautiful balance there, and so, my energy is not that dense. and my purpose is to bring in as much light as possible. So it makes sense that I can't quite resonate with the dense, with that dense tradition, if that makes sense.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Oh, I'd never heard it described in that way. And so you feel like the original goddess energy was in Egypt, which is still in Africa, right?
It depends.
Where do you feel like the location of that, the origin point of the goddess energy that you work with is?
See, I don't think it is a specific place. Because we're dealing with an energy here. So if anything, the energy just came down here to be embodied in a human being who was able to live. And now we can have their stories through that person who's now actually a goddess, right? But the true essence did not originate from earth. It came from a higher place and then dropped into that human form to be lived or expressed. Yeah. So when I trace it, it actually goes above the earth or the physical reality.
Interesting. Wow. So I really want to hear this, what you wrote.
Yes.
I wanted to share this poem. We've been building up to it.
All right. So it is called I Am Goddess. And again, this kind of goes through my journey in terms of the embodying my divine feminine self, my higher self, I should say. I am goddess. Goddess, I am. I am awake, opening my eyes to the wonders of the universe as me. I am goddess. Mysteries unfolding, priestess, medicine woman, I am goddess. My tongue translating the golden frequency of the divine. Prophetess, I am goddess. I roll with my divine posse of angels, archangels, guides, and guardians, the wise ones, and the masters of light. I am goddess. I illuminate in the deep, ancient wisdom of my inner knowing. I honor myself, my work, my life, my gifts. I am goddess. I am a queen, woman, wife, mother. I am goddess. I am divine. I am love. I am fire. I am passion. I am goddess. I am worthy. I am rebirth. I am joy. I am goddess. I dig my roots into the sacred earth and drink deep from the well of healing, nourishment, and passion. I am goddess. I live an empowered life, aligned with my soul expression and higher consciousness. I am goddess. I co-create with divinity. I am divinity unfolding. I am goddess. I am fierce like the black jaguar, bold like the lioness. I am goddess. I roll with the dragons and the phoenix, a conduit for divine love. I am goddess.
Boy, that's so beautiful to hear. I get tingles hearing it, just you reading it, and then I can just imagine you writing that, like the energy coming through and how you feel. I mean, I've written similar things where you're like writing it and afterwards you're like, oh.
Yes. You got it. You got it. Yep. It was definitely very powerful. I think each section came in, like they didn't all come in at one time. So we would be in the temple of, let's say, Green Tara, and a section will come in, or we would move into the temple of Isis and a section will come in. So it's like the whole journey unfolding on paper, basically.
Beautiful. Well, thank you so much for blessing us with that transmission. It's definitely, I encourage listeners to rewind and listen to it again as often as you like. Yes, thank you so much. And we've gobbled up our time here talking about the goddess and the transition between feeling small and human. and what all the, various different things that we might experience on the journey of being able to say and feel and live,
Yes.
I
Yeah.
am goddess. So thank you so much for walking with us and sharing about your experiences on that journey. And it's for me, and I don't know if that's true for you, but on any given day I may revisit any part of that journey. I may find myself
Exactly.
feeling small and a human and not feeling like I am the goddess. And then thank goodness I might have a poem like that in my book, or now a recording with beautiful Abigail that I can go and listen to and remind myself in those
Yes.
moments, that when I feel small, human, disempowered, whatever I might feel. So I just want to remind folks that we have those moments, and then we get to remember. And oftentimes remembering means that we've forgotten for a minute. In
Yes,
fact,
exactly.
that's the meaning of my name, Sama, from Sanskrit, means remembering again and again our
Beautiful.
divine consciousness. So the
Beautiful.
remembering again and again means in between the remembering, there's forgetting, right?
Exactly. Yes. Yeah.
Uh,
Yeah. Yeah.
so wonderful. So do you have any additional words to share in closing? I know that you can please do share ways that folks can get in touch with you. They want to connect with you about what you've shared, and we'll put links to your books, because you've participated and written in three different books, right? So we can
Yes,
link
you
to
got
your
it.
books. So anything else you want to share about how folks can get in touch with you, and any closing blessings for us?
Yeah. So first, you can always find me on social media. If you're on Instagram, you can find me through Intuitive Goddess Coach. If you're on Facebook, just type in my name and I will pop up. I do have a free Facebook group if you love my energy and you kind of want to get to know me more and dive into my energy, Moon Goddess Sacred Sanctum. You can find that and just say hello to me. Send me a message. Let me know how this resonated with you. And just the last message I wanted to leave everyone with is be empowered in your humanity, because that is what it means to be a goddess. Being goddess doesn't mean you're perfect. It doesn't mean that you can't have a bad day. No, that is part of being a goddess. So when you're not having that not so perfect day and you need that reminder, I want you to say, I am human. I am goddess. I am human. I am goddess. It is absolutely okay. And you're still a goddess, regardless of what happens or what is going on in your life. You're still a goddess.
Mm. Thank you, Abigail, for affirming that for all of us. Yes. Well, all right. And listeners know that if you want to learn more about the Womb-Centered Healing Temple and the writings that I've published or will be publishing, you can go to the Womb-Centered Healing Temple. I'm sorry, wombcenteredhealing.com, which is the online Womb-Centered Healing Temple, and learn more about that. So thanks again for joining us, Abigail. That's
Thank
all for
you.
now. Many blessings until next time.
Bye.